Hello and happy holidays here at Dragon Central, otherwise known as my normal level of dragonness. Today we are going to be doing a bit of a holiday tradition. It has been many years since I started writing, and for over half of those, I've had an absolute best friend and close companion, Tobias. He's going to be joining us in a few once his mic and camera decide to cooperate. And he will be staying here with me while we read a holiday short story that I wrote. Now, I've been writing these short stories for almost as long as I've known Tobias. It's our yearly tradition. I write a story, I read it to him around the holidays. I usually try to make him weep unabashedly or laugh until he snorts a beverage. It's a whole lot of fun. So as I said, I'm going to go right into it. This year's story is called Solace of Memory. So we're going to wait around for him to get there. In the meantime, I have a bunch of exciting, fun announcements. First of all, my father, the amazing illustrator for Where Shadows Lie, has recently put out his illustrated Peter Pan. Links are below, but it's absolutely gorgeous. It's in ebook, paperback, and hardback. Big, huge books. Actually, let me see if I can grab one. I think I have them right back here, assuming I don't knock over my entire world. Peter Pan, illustrated by John Fisher. I'm very excited to have worked on this project. It's been something that my whole life, I've had these illustrations in my house. I've seen them grow and change. And so to be part of that project was absolutely wonderful. So that is out. Solace of Memory, which we're going to be reading from today, is also out as a free ebook on Story Origin. It's linked below if you want to read along and all that jazz. It's also available in paperback from Amazon because I love holding things in my hand, and why not, right? I apologize in advance today in this stream if I scream out in pain. Much like the last time, there is a stray kitten in my living room. And that kitten has sharp claws, sharper than mine. And she also has sharp teeth. And she just woke up from a nap. So, yes. This should be fun. I've completely lost my train of thought. Oh, there she goes. Apparently she can hit a screen hard enough to move my entire setup. So she may not be a kitten, she may be a wrecking ball. This is of particular news to me, and now I am suddenly much more scared for this lovely Christmas tree. She has learned to climb it, and it is the end of the world. So some other news before Tobias joins us. We are over at my Plot Mom Discord server doing a fun holiday giveaway of covers called The Fiction Games. So if you love writing short stories, come join us. The link is below. We have a bunch of other exciting things that we're planning for 2021, such as Edit Palooza and some more writing classes and challenges and all sorts of fun things. We have a ton of shenanigans going on every single day over at Plot Mom server. So make sure, if you're not part of it already, to jump in. It's going to be a fantastic year in 2021. We're going to make up for this one. We have some absolutely amazing authors there who give advice, all sorts of writing challenges and stuff like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I am now making some small talk because apparently our technical troubles are more than we expected. But let me talk a little bit about Solace of Memory before he gets on, because he doesn't need to hear this. This is my stuff. I just want to make him cry. Doesn't need to know how much I cried while writing it. This year has been very introspective for me. It's been really good in some ways. I published 2 novels and multiple novelettes. My stack of books up above me is growing taller than my camera can see, which is super exciting. And it's been great professionally, but it's also been heartbreaking to see what's happening around the world between the pandemic and all of the strife that it has caused beyond the incredible toll on human lives that it has taken. And so when I went to write this story this year, it was knowing that I wanted to write about disease, and I wanted to write about trauma, and I wanted to write about the aftermath, because we are seeing the vaccines start to come in. We are seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're still in the tunnel. And I really pondered how best to do this. And I decided the character I wanted to focus on was Gabriel. He is one of the protagonists in Where Shadows Lie, and he is a doctor, not fully accredited, still left the academy while he was still in training. But in writing the sequel to Where Shadows Lie, which I am about 40% through, his love of healing and of medicine has really been shining through and important to him. So we really wanted to explore that, and this story was a perfect chance for it. He, as you'll see in the story, is coming back from working as a frontline medic during an epidemic. So please be aware that if this is a difficult subject for you or could trigger some negative reactions, please proceed with caution. It is about hope. It is about found family and coming together and remembering both that which we lost and that there is hope at the end. But I really did dig as deep as I could while writing this. I read hundreds of firsthand accounts of frontline nurses and doctors and spoke to several of them and have tried to make this as authentic as I could. Of course, I am not one of those people. The most I can do is support them from afar. I'm very immunocompromised and have not left the house pretty much at all since March. So I hope I've done it justice. It's one of those complicated things. I think any time that you're writing about something real that you are not directly related to, it's complicated. So if anyone does have thoughts or ideas, please feel free to comment below, shoot them my way. I'm always very receptive to hearing it. And one of the wonderful parts about being an indie author is that I can change it all up and actually make those edits if they are necessary. So it looks like we are hopefully going to have a Tobias very, very soon. So get a warm beverage, settle in. The short story is about 17,000 words long, so it should take about an hour to read. Once we get going, we'll probably not have that many interruptions, so feel free to say hi if you're watching this live. Again, get cozy. I know I am dragon. I am always dragon. Must be dragon. This is a holiday tradition. It was one of my favorite Christmas gifts. I wore it for like a month straight. I went grocery shopping in it. This terrified and horrified, my poor partner, when I came back from the store and I was still wearing my toothless kigurumi because of the absolute dork that I am. But yes, it's, as I said, this is one of the big ones. This story, I think, is my favorite piece of writing that I have composed this year, and I've written a lot this year. I've written in multiple worlds and multiple genres for multiple publications, and this is the one I think I'll remember, which is kind of fitting since this whole plot is about memory and about remembering. I believe that we have a Tobias incoming shortly, hopefully, and we will get started. I'd love to hear in the meantime about your guys' holiday work. What are you reading when it gets cold? What do you like? What are your holiday traditions around writing? I feel like it becomes such a big part of our author's life, this constant churning out of words, that it's fun to kind of stop and change things up from time to time. I know Nano is that for so many people. Currently, we have In December in the indie world, which is exciting. We get a lot of people reading and reviewing indie works. I know that a lot of writers put out little novelettes and novellas like I have around the holidays, and I love reading them. They're like a guilty pleasure of mine. Give me my like sappy found family goodness where everyone is like drinking hot beverages and giving each other presents. Like it can just literally be like 100,000 words of inane holiday babble and I will eat it up. Like my guilty pleasure is like holiday Lifetime movies. Don't judge me. Actually, you can judge me. It's worth being judged for that. Yeah, it's a problem. I am sappy. Everyone who knows me, it's like at the moment that Thanksgiving is over, I'm just like, I don't care if I'm Jewish. I'm having my Christmas tree. Let me get me lights. I don't turn off the Christmas tree for like until January, February, March, if they let me. I will not take my Christmas tree down until I am forced to at knife point. It's a problem. Hello. I have written a Christmas story for the Christmas Lights charity anthology for the past few years. That is wonderful. I absolutely love charity auctions and anthologies and all that sort of thing. It's absolutely fantastic. And guess who just popped up? We have a Tobias. Are we ready to say hi to him? Because I am. Hello, Mr. Moo.
Hello. I had to update the software for my camera, apparently. So,
well, it's looking great. I love your like dramatically lit chair on your backdrop of doom with your piano. It's
yes, you wouldn't be able to tell. This is just my bedroom.
Well, I think it's a great update, and afterwards I'm going to come and get cat hair all over that nice back.
It already has cat hair, don't worry. It exists in this house.
Well, Mr. Tobias, are you ready for a holiday story? And do you want to tell our audience a little bit about the last one I read? And
I don't remember. Oh, man, because the last one...
The last one was the Alejandro
Riona Remembrance of the Candles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't been listening because I was moving around my room trying to set this up. So I don't know how much you've already covered in terms of our tradition.
A little bit. I've just mentioned.
But so yeah, basically Allegra has this long and glorious tradition of writing tragic stories for me every kind of winter holiday season, and that have, gotten increasingly pointed as time goes on, and we have more tragedy to draw off of in our characters' backstories. And the last one was involving some characters that readers of the series, people who've read Where Shadows Lie have met, and some that they will in the future in subsequent novels.
I think my proudest moment during that moment was when you screamed so loudly it brought my partner running.
Yes.
That one of us had dramatically injured ourselves. So let's see if we can cop that.
Yes. So yeah, this is a tradition, and last time was dealing with kind of expanding on some in-world mourning and remembrance traditions, and tradition is there's other words, but for that part of their kind of culture and religion. So
we're going even deeper this year. So buckle in, and we're going to begin. This is Solace of Memory, dedicated to all the lives lost and remembered in 2020 and all those who fought to save them. May your memory be a blessing. Chapter 1, Denial. The rattling gasps woke Gabriel from a fitful sleep, where he sat on a stool in the corner of the ward. The smell of death and smoke hung like a shroud over the sweltering hospital room, even with the windows flung wide and a circuitry-powered fan moving the stagnant air. Gabe blinked away the drowsiness and looked around, trying to find the source of the noise. 8 beds had been crammed into the room that had once held 4. On each, a patient lay, the youngest a child of 10, the eldest in his 70s. It was that man who was gasping for air, back arched off the bed in a posture Gabriel had become far too familiar with over the last month. Getting to his feet was hard. Everything hurt, and his head was pounding. The stimulant drug that was keeping him from catching wasting fever had allowed for little sleep, even when he'd had the opportunity to lie down. Each step pressed against the blisters on his feet, but despite the discomfort, Gabe crossed the room as fast as he could. "I'm here. Let's get you sitting, Tom. You'll be able to breathe easier," he said, reaching the bed. The old man grasped his hand when Gabe offered it, staring up at him with wide, panic-filled eyes as his mouth opened and chest spasmed, with no sound but the wheezing escaping his blue-tinged lips. Gabriel knelt on the bed, using what leverage he could to pull Tom gently upward. The man let out a gargled scream, limbs going rigid in pain. Head turned so his patient could not see it, Gabriel squeezed his eyes shut. He managed to keep his voice steady as he rubbed at Tom's back. "Concentrate on each breath, my friend. I know you're scared, but we'll get through this. Breathe with me. In and out." Gabriel walked home to the academy through the snow, each crunching footfall slow and tired. His bag was slung over his shoulder, and though it had been days since he had left Muriel, he just hadn't found the time to remove the medic patches from his coat. A carriage passed by, headed into town. Through the windows, he saw students packed in like sardines with cases piled on their laps. The last boat to the mainland had to be leaving soon. With a sigh, he bent his head and continued to walk, his hope that he would catch Frederick or Faye before they left for the holidays growing dimmer along with the setting of the sun. He should have saved up enough for the coach ride back to the academy, but like all his fellow student medics, he had donated the substantial paycheck from Tirett Mindell to help the victims of the wasting fever outbreak. Gabe didn't regret it yet, but he was sure he would when the day of remembrance came and for the first time ever, he'd be alone. A last kiss from Faye would have certainly helped balm that pain. The gates of the academy were flung open, wrought iron dusted in snow. "Hey, Navarro, didn't realize you'd make it home for the holidays. Didn't you go straight back to Hardor?" one of the Silver Guard watching the gate said, waving at him. "Need to get caught up on schoolwork," Gabe replied, trying and failing to conjure a smile. "Finals don't stop just because plagues start." "True that. Glad to see you back safe. I'll catch you later." With a last wave, Gabriel turned to the path. Coming in from the south the way he had, the Corsic storms were clear across the grounds. He rounded the library and the temple, took the long way around the Silver Guard barracks to avoid the mud near the training yard, and finally got to junior housing. Gabe nearly cried as his building came into view, a fire lighting the windows and candles flickering on the sill. The snow on the front steps had been swept away. As expected, no one was in the living room, but there was a pot of what smelled like mulled wine by the hearth, so someone had to still be there, even if it was only Master Robin. After setting his pack down on the nearest chair, Gabe bent to remove his boots. The last thing he needed was a lecture about tracking mud into the house. That might be the straw that broke the thin veneer of all right that he had scraped together on the boat voyage back from Muriel. As he worked on the icy laces, he groaned, every muscle sore and in need of a hot shower. Should that come first, or dinner? The loud growl from his stomach answered that. Stopping for a minute to warm his hands by the fire on the way, Gabriel crossed over to his bedroom door. Huh. Frederick must have forgotten to make his bed before leaving. That was unlike him, but he did always get excited near the holidays. To keep his friend from getting in trouble with Robin, Gabe dropped his pack on his own bed, shrugged off his coat, and fixed Frederick's covers. As he did that, he noticed the suitcase that usually sat tucked between the bed and the dresser was still there. Gabe tilted his head to the side. Had he gotten the dates wrong? Frederick should have left earlier, and Faye would have had to leave that morning at the latest to make it home in time to celebrate with Cornan and the rebellion. Midwinter was their organization's biggest and most important season, a time to help the families of those the Lyrian had forgotten, and a time to recruit. She never missed one. Gabriel. Robin's voice came from the doorway. You're back already? I thought you weren't due until tomorrow morning. Welcome home. Thank you, Master Robin. We had the wind with us and made good time out of Muriel. Have the boats to Lorraine already left? Aye, they have. Were you hoping to make one? Not this year, Gabe replied, shoulders slumping. Even if he had wanted to go home with Faye, he couldn't have afforded it. Since he was making some money of his own, he refused to let Cornan foot that bill again. The rebellion needed the funds more than Gabriel needed to be in Hardor for a few days. Even so, his heart ached for it, for the smell of Mari's baking and for late nights playing Seven Rivers with his friends and Willem. If he could get away from the palace long enough. Well then, let me know your plans. The teachers and students who stay over midwinter tend to have a gathering of our own for Remembrance Day. You are welcome to join us, his teacher said. Gabriel gave him a nod of thanks. That sounds great. Do you mind if I lie down for a few hours? I'm exhausted. Of course. I'd like to hear of your time in Muriel, but only after you've had a chance to rest. Though I thought you'd want to see Miss Avalor and Mr. Tellin first. Gabe had gone back to making the bed, but his head snapped up at that. Wait, they're still here? But I thought you said the last boat to Lorraine had already left. Yes, it did, but neither of them was on it. Both chose to remain here for the holidays, hoping you would make it back. I believe they're at the practice yards at present. Gabe was already squeezing past Robin towards the door by the end of that sentence. Before he could run out into the cold again, though, his teacher caught him by the back of his shirt. Perhaps a shower first, Mr. Navarro? Before you go running around my academy with dirt smudges on your nose? Then, with a twinkle in his eyes, he added, I'm certain Miss Avalor would appreciate it as well. These are lies. Faye would not appreciate showers. She is a filth goblin. A hasty shower and change of clothes later, Gabriel raced towards the training yards as fast as the slushy snow permitted. He was still several turns away when he heard Faye's voice ringing through the crisp air. If you keep telegraphing your attacks before you make them, of course they're going to kick our ass. Would you please stop smiling before you swing high? It's basically the same as fucking shouting it. A 5-year-old could predict what you're about to do. She sounded out of breath and quite cross. Says Miss always follows a sidestep with a feint. Learn it before you teach it, Avalor. And for the record, in what twisted reality would I be fighting a 5-year-old? Frederick's deeper voice countered. Let's go again, if you two are willing. Actually, Gabe said, stepping out from around the armory with a wide grin. I think practice is done for the day. Faye and Frederick were standing in the middle of one of the fighting rings, him with a practice sword and her with a stave. They were tied together at the waist, with about 6 feet between them. 2 older students were catching their breaths across the muddy ring. Unlike Gabe's friends, they were not bound to each other. Denzel Tritian, the weapons master, had originally forced Faye and Frederick to fight tied together to get them to cooperate, but Gabriel suspected these days it was because they worked better as a team than on their own. Gabe, Faye cried, swiveling around. Her staff dropped to the ground, and she raced straight at him. Whoa there, Avalar! Oof! Frederick yelled as she jerked him, still attached to her, right into the fence around the training yards, as she vaulted over it to throw herself into Gabe's arms. Gabe might have felt sympathy for his friend, but he was a bit too busy falling backwards into the slush with an armful of curly red hair and exuberant energy on top of him. Not caring one bit that mud was soaking his freshly washed hair and seeping into his uniform, Gabriel squeezed Faye in the tightest hug he could manage and buried his face in her curls. "Hey there, beautiful," he whispered. Her lips found his in a long overdue kiss, and the last month faded away in a rush of relief and joy. "Are you going to drown the poor man in a puddle right after he makes it back, just to have your wicked way with him, Avalor? Shame on you," Frederick said. He had made it over the fence, rubbing his chest and busy untying the rope that still connected him to Faye. "Welcome home, Navarro. I wasn't expecting either of you to still be here," he replied with a laugh, as Frederick offered him and Faye a hand each to get up. Once Gabriel was on his feet, the tall nobleman hugged him too. Both of his friends were already covered in mud splatters from practice, so it wasn't as though a little extra dirt could hurt. "And leave you alone with Robin? He would have made you study to catch up all the way through midwinter," Faye said, shaking her head and beaming up at him. "Besides, Tellen has been pining for you, staring at the window all day, waiting for your return." Frederick snorted, the red and black beads at the end of his drained locks clinking together as he shook his head. Absolutely. That was definitely me and not you, Avalor. The truth be told, I have been pining for some actual interesting company instead of a brutal taskmistress who drags me out here every chance she gets. She delights in leaving me bruised and bleeding, I tell you." Faye smacked Frederick on the arm, scrunching up her nose. "I wouldn't have to if you practice fighting when left to your own devices, instead of burying your nose in your poison and politics books. If I'm going to be literally tied to you until graduation, you're going to have to keep up with me." "I've missed you both so fucking much," Gabe said, pulling his friends in for another welcome and sorely needed hug. It was good to be home. Chapter 2. Anger. "I want more of the medicine, the one that makes the pain go away and my breathing better," Tom wheezed when he was finally able to, and Gabriel had settled him back into bed. "You gave more to Ito, and he got better." Gabe let out a sigh, eyes rising from the clipboard he had just picked up. "If I gave you more now, there wouldn't be enough later. Ito got more because his family paid for more. It shouldn't be that way, but last time you talked me into giving you extra, I got the lecture of a lifetime. There's only so much Sarandella to go around in the general supply. If you get extra, someone else won't get a dose." "I don't give a rat's ass about anyone else. No one's ever given one for me," the old man grumbled. "That might be because you're a cranky old scarecrow," Gabe said, with a smile that Tom returned after rolling his eyes. "You're not wrong, but don't think I won't be reporting you. No way to speak to a dying man. This whole system's fucked, and fuck you for working for it. If you have an ounce of decency, you give me the drugs. How much sicker's a man gotta get before he gets some proper care?" In contrast to his words, Tom patted the bed beside him, then sank further into his pillows, as though the simple motion was all he could manage without getting winded. "Sit with me, will ya? There's a good lad. For fuck's sake, you really are a kid, aren't you? I never noticed, but in the light you're all baby-faced. Young and healthy and all fancy in that Tirant Mandel uniform. Fuck you! I turn 18 this spring." Gabe sat, the cot creaking. He really ought to do his rounds again, but no one was crying out, and he doubted Tom would be with them much longer. Gabe hoped he passed before one of the attending physicians decided they were wasting medication on him. There had been one of those patients the week before in bed 3, and Gabriel still woke up with her screams ringing in his ears. "And my uniform isn't fancy. It's covered in sweat and your piss. I still think you missed the bedpan on purpose, you old perv." Tom laughed, which turned into a cough, which turned into his chest spasming as he gasped for air. "Trying to kill me, you are. Should be mad, but I'm too tired for it. Would you would you sit with me for a while until I can sleep again? You're shit company, but it's better than nothing. Gabe gave his hand a gentle squeeze. Of course I'll sit with you, Tom. I'll be here as long as you need me. So, how was it? Faye was the first to broach the subject. They were sitting around the hearth in their dorm, drinking mulled wine. Robin had left after dinner, and no other classmates were staying over, so for the first time Gabe could remember, the three of them had the place to themselves. Each building in Core 6 housing was set up the same. A living room, a small classroom for study with their live-in teacher, and 6 bedrooms. By their final year, only Frederick and Gabriel were still sharing a room, 4 of the 10 students they had started with having dropped out or fallen behind over the course of the previous years. Worst thing I've seen since millennia, Gabe answered, chin resting on top of Faye's head and an arm wrapped around her waist. They had dragged pillows and blankets into the living room and were sitting on the floor, leaning up against the nearby armchairs. The pyres were going around the clock, and they ran out of dry wood, so the smoke was so thick it blotted out the sun some days. By the time I left, they were running so low on fuel that they were digging mass graves. From across from them, Faye's feet in his lap, Frederick shuddered. That sounds horrific. I thought the mortality rate for wasting fever was starting to come down, what with that new early treatment protocol you were talking about before you left. It is, Gabe replied, after taking a long sip of his mulled wine and tamping down the burst of annoyance. Frederick didn't know how many times his patients had asked that question, and how hard it had been not to be able to give them the answer they wanted. It wasn't his friend's fault that it poked at a bruise Helen didn't know existed. The new protocol is complicated and takes a lot of attention from the doctors overseeing the physical therapy and drug regimen. It's expensive, too, and even if it wasn't, though, there just weren't enough medics to give that kind of care to everyone who needed it, not when hundreds of new infected showed up every day. It was starting to finally slow when I left, now that the colder weather is here and the mosquitoes are dying off, but if the Muriel government doesn't shell out the funds for daily Serendella treatment for at least a year, it will just happen again next spring. Frederick was already shaking his head. There's no way Muriel will do that. Even with how much money the Lyrian are funneling into the country, it would be too sizable an amount, especially with how high Serendella prices are these days. Yeah, I know. Gabe closed his eyes, shoulders tensing. The tapered-down dose of the drug Gabe had taken with dinner was making him jittery, but the alcohol helped. It had been the only way he'd managed to get a few hours of sleep each night, the last week of his posting. It had dulled the desire to give the medicine away to those who needed it more, even though it was the only thing keeping him safe from the fever. And it makes me so fucking frustrated, because it means everything we've done, all the lives we saved and all the ones we couldn't, won't change a damn thing. Everyone who caught the fever will relapse as soon as they can't afford the Serendella, and more will be infected every summer. The nobles up north are safe, so why would they spend the money? It's not the fault of the people who are suffering that their government isn't taking responsibility for this mess, but they're the ones dying. He had to fight hard not to let his hands ball up in fists, yet the desire to vent a month of fresh fury at the injustices he had witnessed was hard to subdue. It's criminal. That's always the case, Faye said, taking his hand and kissing the palm, as though she could feel his need for a calming touch. Bless her. Somehow she seemed to always know. But you did make a difference, Gabriel. There are people alive today who would have died if not for you, right? Not enough. The need to move was making his legs twitch and heart race, but Gabe stayed put. With Farian leaning against him, it was a little easier to keep the despair that had been his constant companion over the last month at bay. It had been there, tangible like the smoke hanging low in the muggy air, shadowing his every waking hour and haunting his sleep. He had seen it bow the shoulders of every doctor and nurse fighting against the endless tide of incoming patients, and felt it weigh down his feet as he ran from bed to bed, choosing who would get the life-saving drug and who would die without it. The fact that Tiramandel had reserved so much Serendella to keep their own staff safe when it could have saved countless more lives was as frustrating as it was sensible. Gabe, no offense, my friend, but you don't look so good. Is there anything we can do to help? Frederick asked. With a shake of the head to clear it, Gabriel realized he had fallen silent. He drained his cup. Do we have anything stronger than wine? I'd like to say I'm fine, but I'm not. Even after everything I've seen in Loren, this was different. It was the worst part, I think, was how slow it was. I had time to get to know them all before they died. It was so painful. When we've dealt with the raised towns and villages in Loren, most people are already dead, or their wounds take them quickly. This disease isn't like that. No, it's not. Cedric grew silent for a while, staring out the window as though thinking hard. Then he clambered to his feet. He returned a minute later with a bottle of brandy. Gabriel gratefully let him add a hefty splash to his glass. When Frederick had returned to his spot on the floor, he said, "I've seen it, you know. A family member of mine caught wasting fever when she was little. She survived the initial illness but had a rough recovery. I'll never forget the way she would cry and scream for hours. I cannot imagine what a whole ward of that must have been like." "Like a nightmare," Gabe supplied. "We didn't have enough cots for everyone. There were people lying in the hallways and not half enough doctors to tend to them. On my third day there, they enacted field triage protocols. Those who didn't have a good chance of recovery were all placed in one ward and offered nothing but palliative care. I did a few shifts there, and..." He couldn't make the words move past a lump of anger and grief in his throat. It was in the shape of a 3-letter word, of a name. Gabriel wanted to tell them about the face that haunted so many of his nightmares, but every time he let his thoughts drift to that wizened visage, all of it threatened to come back. The death, the pain, the helpless horror of realizing his best would not be enough. Faye gave his leg a squeeze. "You don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Maybe you should take a break from working at the clinic, love. Sounds like you could use some time off." Gabe shook his head. "Can't afford to. I donated my pay." "Again?" Frederick asked. "Gabriel, you need money. You're in mountains of debt to the school, and while I'm happy to help out while we're here together, I'm not continuing on to the colleges. You need savings." "Maybe I'll get a scholarship," Gabe ventured, though without much hope. "And if I don't, I can always keep working nights." "And burn out like you did at the end of last year," Faye chided. "If you'd let Dad keep..." "I'm not going to take money from the rebellion when I'm capable of working, Faye," he snapped. "We've been over this. Your father and Mari covered 3 years of my expenses. That's more than generous enough." He couldn't see her face, but Gabe just knew that Faye rolled her eyes. "They think of you as family, idiot. They're still putting the funds aside each year, even though you refuse to take them. Yeah, well, when they need them for something, they'll still be there untouched. Besides, after this last month, I'll likely get a promotion at the clinic. I should be able to put enough aside by the time term ends to make it home with you for the summer. If I need to work for the island while I'm in Harder to keep my loans from coming due after graduation, I can do that alongside helping the rebellion. I'm used to pulling double duty." "Too used to it," Faye muttered. "I wish Robin hadn't convinced you to take more classes this year. I feel like I never actually get to see you." "But when you do, aren't you happy it's my favorite time of day?" he asked with a smile. She gave his knee a firm smack. "Don't you think being sweet with me will make me less annoyed at you? You were supposed to only be away for 2 weeks, if you recall." Before Gabe could reply, Faye added, "Though I knew that was a lie even before you left, you have no self-control when it comes to volunteering for more than you ought to handle." Frederick snorted. "As opposed to you, Avalor, who, if I remember correctly, spends all her evenings planning to overthrow whole monarchies on top of her schoolwork at the most prestigious and difficult school in Corinne." "Yes, well, not everyone can be as good as me." She grinned, raising her glass and giving Frederick a light kick with her bare foot. Gabriel nestled his face into her curls and closed his eyes. There was just something about holding Farian that always made him feel so relaxed. With the weight of the last month and their uncertain futures on his shoulders, he planned to enjoy it for as long as the winter break allowed. Drink. Am I lulling you into a false sense of safety, Tobias?
Well, because usually these are, more a short story than a novella, so it hits you like, it's like, okay, we have this, relatively small amount of words. It gets straight into the heartbreak really quickly because that's what you have to do. And so this is like, okay, I can see that something's coming. Just taking longer than I'm used to get there.
Let us continue. On the first day of Midwinter Black's 3-day festival, Gabriel woke in Faye's bed. She was still sleeping, her naked body pressed up to his on the narrow mattress and her breath warm against his chest. Snow was falling outside the window, the house quiet and the world still. It surprised Gabriel that he'd actually slept, considering he was still on a sizable dose of Sarandala. But the nightmare that had woken him tugged at Gabe's consciousness. His head was pounding from the brandy he had kept drinking until it had put him to sleep. Yet still, the faces of the dead and the cries of the dying were there. He was there, bitterly asking why Gabe hadn't saved him. Every time Gabriel closed his eyes, every time he stopped moving, the question returned. What if he could have done more? To keep from pondering it further, he kissed his lover's forehead. Good morning, beautiful. Faye scrunched her nose and pulled the covers up high, pressing her face into the crook of his arm. Must you be so chipper in the mornings? And must you be so grumpy when it's almost time for breakfast? Gabe asked, willfully pushing the lingering weight of the dream away. Faye snorted, then stretched with a groan. Do you expect me to want to move when we don't have classes to get to and the boy I rather enjoy spending time with is naked in my bed? You know, some girls would be hurt to have their partner leave for a month right after the first time they had sex, she said, jabbing a finger into Gabe's chest, then kissing him to soften the barb. It's almost like you're a good person who puts other people before himself or something. It's super annoying. That's me, a veritable beacon of perfection. That earned Gabe a snort and a naked young woman straddling his hips. Sure you are. A loud knock came from the door. Go away, Tellin, Faye yelled. How did you even know it was me? Frederick's muffled voice replied. Could have been Robin coming to ground Gabriel for about a year for falling asleep in your room. Because you always have the worst timing. Gabe tried and failed to suppress a laugh. Faye glared down at him and mouthed, What, you want him walking in? Eyebrows rising, Gabriel's smile only grew. Are you saying you'd complain? She shook her head, curls bouncing. I never should have told you I find him attractive. You're insufferable. What are you two talking about in there? Can I come in? No, Faye shouted. Not unless you want to see us both naked. I see you naked all the time. We have communal showers, Avalor. But point taken, just hurry up, yeah? I want breakfast. As Frederick's footsteps faded, Faye looked down at Gabriel, lips pursed and eyes sparkling with mirth. She trailed a finger down the light brown skin of his scarred chest, rolling her hips in a way that made him groan. So, are you going to hurry up or what? You have an anniversary to make up for, and I'm charging interest. Gabe laughed, pushing up on his elbows to kiss her. Of course you are. Are you serious? Faye asked as Gabriel dragged her into the library. You just got back, and you want to study? We're not even supposed to be studying. It's a religious holiday. I'm an atheist, Gabe pointed out, as he and Frederick led the way towards their preferred nook in the expansive building full to bursting with books. And I'm a month behind. Contingent early acceptance letters to the colleges are going to arrive any day now. If I have a shot at the College of Science scholarship, I'll have to be in the top 5% of our class. And I have to get through the lessons I would have been taking during break if I had been home, Frederick said, hefting the large bag of books to make his point. I don't know when my parents plan on me picking up one of their water writs, but when they do, I have to be ready for it. I'll be head of my house one day. Yeah, we know you're important. No need to rub it in, Tellin, Faye complained. For all her griping, though, she settled in with a book on military tactics without much fuss once they found their spot. Unfortunately, studying wasn't as easy as Gabriel had expected. Every time someone cleared their throat or footsteps came their way, his whole body tensed, all focus vanishing as adrenaline coursed through him. Frustration mounting higher and higher, Gabe grit his teeth and jabbed his pen down harder each time he dotted an I. At one point, Faye actually reached over to loosen his grip on his pen. Are you sure you don't need more of a break? I'm fine, he muttered, stretching to try to relax his tense shoulders. Gabe had almost finished writing up his report of the last month when Robin appeared between the stacks. Ah, exactly who I was looking for. How are you three this morning? Quite well, Master Robin, Frederick answered, emerging from behind a thick tome on Larinian law. It's nice to be here without classes. Their teacher chuckled. Yes, I remember that feeling after graduation from Core 6 and before I started my college days. It was relaxing. Farian, do please take your feet off the table. Faye gave Robin an unexpectedly cold look and didn't budge. Huh, what had Gabriel missed? He would have to ask her about it later. She'd always had a contentious relationship with her Core 6 instructor, but this was colder than her usual sizzling annoyance. Robin, meanwhile, was shaking his head but didn't push, turning instead to Gabriel. I took the liberty of compiling the assignments you missed while in Marielle. I'd suggest starting on them over break, so you aren't too far behind when next term begins. Damn it. Gabriel tried to suppress a sigh, but didn't quite manage it. Before he could take the pile of papers Robin had pulled out of a satchel, though, Farian slammed her book down. He's already decided he's going to science if they'll have him. Why keep pushing diplomacy and discipline on him? He already hardly has time to breathe between classes and work, and just came back from the front lines of a damn epidemic. Doesn't he deserve a few fucking days' rest? Faye, I'm fine, Gabe protested, squashing down his own frustration since it would only fuel Farian's. Trying to put on a brave face, he took the folder. Gabriel had hoped Robin would give him a pass this once since he had been working for the island, but apparently even plagues didn't stop schoolwork. Thank you for putting this together, Master Robin. Are we forgetting during last year's finals when you literally worked yourself so ragged you collapsed? Because I haven't, Faye snapped, still glaring at Robin. Or the year where you only had 5 minutes between classes for 10 hours straight every day? He's putting too much pressure on you. Not even stopping for midwinter is an insult and a disgrace. You ought to get the same vacation as anyone else. Miss Avalor, could we have a word in private? Robin said, tone even and patient, despite her obvious animosity. They gave him a curt nod, and they walked away together. As soon as they were gone, Gabe leaned over and asked, what happened there? Cedric shrugged. I have no idea, but they've been prickly at each other ever since your letter saying that you were extending your stay in Marielle by 2 weeks arrived. I've tried to get why out of her, but she won't spill. I wouldn't ask if you value your longevity. Every time I've brought it up, I've had something chucked in my head, though she might be less likely to do that to you. Doubtful, Gabe replied, brows scrunching with worry. Why would his decision to stay in Marielle longer affect Robin and Farian? To distract himself, he set Robin's assignments aside and asked, Game of Seven Rivers for 10? I think Faye will need some fresh air after this, so I don't really want to start another project. Sure. They cleared off the table and were over halfway into the card game when Faye returned. She stomped over and thudded down on the couch next to Gabriel, letting out a loud huff. Don't ask about what happened. I don't want to talk about it. We weren't going to, Frederick said. Good. She rested her head back on the cushions, let out a long sigh, then sat up straight. Right. Who's winning? Who do you think? Frederick asked with a groan. You shouldn't let him play a defensive game, Tellin. You know he'll always wipe you out in the second half if you do. Yeah, well, I didn't mean to, but Gabe got a Drago writ early and cut off all his cities from Hardor, Frederick explained, pointing at the cards placed in the ever-expanding grid on the table between them. Gabe smirked. It's called a secession play. If you had stopped me from making this one-way corridor out of Hardor early on, I couldn't have done it. As he spoke, he placed yet another city, moved the small barge markers onto it, and bought another writ, taking his total to 6 of the 7 he needed to win the game. You should probably concede, Tellin. You're done for. Rub it in, why don't you? The nobleman did, however, put down his cards and hold out his hand in surrender. Game's yours. I swear, it's getting expensive to be your friend, Gabriel. That's why I no longer play him for money, Faye said, starting to gather up the cards. You know, Gabe, you could probably make more playing pickup games in the night market than you do at the clinic. I mean, I know you won't because you have to be dragged out of the clinic kicking and screaming most days, but it's a thought. It was. Gabriel yawned and stretched. Want to do that tonight? Want to go tonight and see? It had, after all, been a long time since they had gone to on a nighttime excursion together. It would be nice to use up some of the excess energy the Serendella was giving him. Hopefully, if he wore himself down enough, the nightmares might leave him alone. Perfect. Let's go.
I think we had a question in chat, though I'm not sure when in the story it was.
I think it's actually about our backdrops.
That.
Really, it should be flipped because Tobias is the paladin and I'm the evil overlady. But
But I also, left to my own devices would live in a hole in the ground. So
it's true. He would. I've seen him. I've seen him live in a closet in my house for like 2 years. It was fun. It was great. I really loved it.
I also lived in a crawl space.
Yes. Our early friendship, it did involve turning a crawl space into a bed and then, like, world building in it. In fact, like, I think a whole bunch of stuff early on was done in that crawl space. Like,
Yeah.
would we even have these books not for that crawl space?
I mean, we had our first conversation about these books, like, in the bus coming from school. So they would probably be different, though.
They would probably be different. I feel like we really let out our, like, darkness in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
We were very strange teenagers, guys. Really strange. All right, let's keep going. Chapter 3, bargaining. No, you can't take me, Tom cried, though it was hard to make out his words through the screaming. The old man was clinging with all his remaining strength to the side of the cot where he had lain for over a week. As medics, trying to be gentle, were attempting to move him onto a stretcher. That's where they take you to die. We're sorry, Mr. Riel, but this bed is needed for someone else. We'll take you somewhere where you will be comfortable. Please don't struggle so. You'll hurt yourself, one of the medics said. Then she looked to Gabriel, who had been collecting Tom's things. What are you standing around for? That can wait. Get his legs. He'll only hurt himself if he makes us drop him. There was a familiar exhaustion and frustration in her tone. Gabe had heard it growing in all the doctors and in himself with every day that passed. Yet it was the panic in Tom's gnarled face that tore at Gabe's soul and weighed down his shoulders. You can't let them take me, Gabe. I'm getting better, Tom screamed. Across the ward, it woke one of the children, who started to cry. Mr. Riel, shut the fuck up. Gabe, please, don't let him take me. I won't ask for the medicine again. I won't curse or anything. Don't. But Tom had to stop to cough, his whole body seizing and his muscles contracted around joints the fever had wasted away. With Tom unable to resist, the two medics finished moving him onto the stretcher. Gabe saw tears in their eyes, and when the first one stood, her skin was pale as the sheet. Does he have family we need to notify about the change of rooms? She asked. No, he's all alone, Gabe replied, fighting hard to hold it together. Tom, I'll be by with your things, all right? I'll come and see you as soon as my shift's done. Tom did not answer, probably in too much pain to hear him. The second medic sighed and looked up at Gabriel. Quietly, he warned, I wouldn't go there if you want to retain any shred of your sanity, Navarro. It's not pretty. The best we've been able to do is keep them sedated, not that we're given the supplies to do so often enough to matter. Do yourself a favor and say your farewells now. I know it's hard when it's the ones we get attached to, but we can't save them all. Focus on the ones you can. Tellen, Gabe complained as Frederick once more put down one set of books and picked up another. They're both good choices. Make up your damn mind. I'm hungry. I was hungry this morning while you were busy getting laid. Payback's a bitch, the nobleman grumbled, hefting the collection of Ian's fables as though trying to guess their weight. She'll like these, but the murder mysteries are fun too. Do you really want to get a Lyria in a book about murder, how to murder people? Faye asked from where she was leaning up against the shelves of the cramped night market bookstore. Eleanor wouldn't murder a fly, Frederick muttered, eyeing the box set of books. That is the ironic statement of the year.
The idea that Eleanor needs help murdering people is that something like a book would, be the tipping point for her is not entirely the most accurate.
Nope. If you change your mind one more fucking time, Frederick, I swear to all that is holy that I will bite you, Faye warned. Promises, promises, Avalar. Frederick flashed Faye a grin, then set the mystery novels on the shelf with a long, drawn-out sigh. The fables it is. You have sharp teeth. 10 minutes and a sum of money that made Gabriel cringe later. They were out on the street. The night market wasn't as packed as it usually was, with so many students having gone home, but it was still bustling with locals. The smoke and steam from the hawker stalls that lined the main thoroughfares hung in the air, blurring the outlines of the taller buildings. Gabe inhaled deeply. Smells of food from all over the continent mixed together in a pleasant, unique way that always made him feel at home. It helped ease the distant, echoey way his surroundings got sometimes when his mind would wander back to Muriel. The hospital had smelled of death, not frying garlic and grilled meats. Except as soon as he thought that, all he could smell was the smoke. Shaking his head sharply to clear it, Gabe turned them in the general direction of their usual favorite haunts. Where to for dinner? You're buying, Helen. Why, thank you for asking, Gabriel. Yes, I would be happy to buy you both dinner at the establishment of your choice, Frederick grumbled. Gabe elbowed him, nearly sending Frederick into a display of pounded copper circuit jewelry. Oi, watch it, the proprietor yelled. Sorry, Gabe called, as Farian snickered and hooked an arm through each of theirs. Boys. I'll get them out of your way, Howard. Sorry for the commotion. True to her word, and despite being shorter than either Gabe or Frederick, Faye dragged them along. I want fish pies. If we're not going to be in Hardor for the holidays, I at least want to eat like we are. Walking three abreast was a challenge in the night market, but that didn't stop Farian. Gabe looked over at Frederick, rolling his eyes. Fed grinned and mouthed, business as usual. The stall they finally stopped at fronted a bakery. Frederick took care of ordering, and before long, they were sitting on an icy stoop, holding steaming pies. Gabriel was the first to dare take a bite of the flaky crust, his stomach grumbling. Remembering the last rifting lesson Robin had given him in his teacher's near 6-year quest for Gabriel to work on the tiny amount of magic he could use, Gabe absorbed a smidge of heat from the pastry. He converted it to magical energy, refilling a bit of his reservoir of power while cooling the pie. It made the gravy just shy of tongue-burning, so he took a large bite. You're cheating again, aren't you? Frederick asked, cracking the top of his with his fingers and blowing on the thick gravy and chunks of fish inside. Having and using magic isn't cheating, especially when it's hardly enough to light a candle. Faye muttered something, face turned down in her thick scarf. Gabe could only conclude that she was agreeing with Frederick. Leaning in, he pressed a kiss to her flushed cheek. Her smile in return warmed him from the top of his head to his toes. That love-struck grin is going to make me lose my appetite, Frederick said, but added, but damned if I didn't miss it. It really is nice to have you back, Gabriel. It hasn't been the same without you here. And I'm not just saying that because of how much more agreeable Farian is when you're around. How many times must I tell you that I hate my full name? At least once more. They left the night market well past 2 a.m. Gabriel's pockets full of coins and small banknotes, and head spinning from probably a few too many drinks. It had eaten up more of his earnings for the evening than he should have spent, but it had made the crowded, smoky bar bearable. I told you you'd make more playing Seven Rivers than at the clinic, Faye said, as all three of them leaned on the rails of the ferry, watching the small island that held the night market fade into the mists. Only because the regulars weren't expecting me to win. Now that they know my skill level, I won't get half as many easy victories, Gabe countered, his gloved hands rubbing Faye's to keep them warm. I'm just glad you finished the last game quickly. I wouldn't want to walk home tonight. It's freezing. Frederick was on Gabriel's other side, coat collar pulled up against the chill wind and scarf and hat leaving only a narrow slit for his brown eyes. I hate the cold. You don't say, Gabe said. I rather enjoy it, better than the summer mugginess. And with no more warning than that, the memories from Muriel crashed into him. He tried to push back the sticky, miserable humidity inside the clinic, heavy with the smell of vomit and death, but the smell lodged in his nose and wouldn't budge. Faye must have noticed how still Gabriel had become, because she gave his hand a tight squeeze. Hey, you all right, love? Lips pressed tightly together, Gabriel nodded. He didn't want to worry her, not over something as little as a stray memory. Just tired. Are you still due for another dose of Serendella tonight, or did you already take it? I hope you sleep better this evening, Faye said, leaning into his shoulder. You were tossing and turning all of last night. Already took it, but I doubt I'll rest well until I've titrated down significantly further. Even when I can sleep, it's light broken and well, I have a lot of shit my subconscious likes throwing at me. I'm sorry if I kept you up too. Yeah, that drug's terrible. I can't believe people take it for fun, Frederick said with a shudder. I can, Gabe said, trying to smile and managing a weak one. First day I was on it, on the way to Muriel, I was bouncing off the damn walls. It was pretty exceptional. I'm kind of happy the side effects are so nasty and it's so expensive. If I can't get my eyes closed tonight, I might borrow that bottle of brandy again, If you don't mind, that is. I'd rather be a bit hungover tomorrow than get so worn out I crash. Frederick gave him a worried look. You already had quite a bit, Gabe. Gabriel waved it off. You know I metabolize things stupidly fast. I'm hardly feeling it. The Sarandella makes it hard to sleep, that's all. I'll be off it by the time term starts up again. An extra drink or two while I'm bright can't hurt, right? Aren't you two always telling me to relax a bit? If you're sure, Frederick said, though he didn't sound convinced. Tirp Mindell is covering the Sarandella, though, right? Faye asked, since it was obligatory. I don't know the cost of it through the school, but I know the price in the black market is off the charts right now. Had a kid try to sell me some for finals last semester, and I had to laugh in his face. Yeah, they're footing the bill. They know they'll never get what what I owe them out of me if I die. I don't even have family to inherit my debt. He gave Faye's hand another squeeze as they both sighed. Frederick patted Gabe on the shoulder. Let me guess, you two not planning on being one of those insufferable couples who get married right out of Core 6? We've written one of those. Faye's eyebrows rose to the bottom of her wool hat. With how much we both owe the school? Not in a million years. Maybe when the rebellion actually succeeds, but until then, I refuse to saddle Gabe with my debt if I end up dying for the cause. And vice versa, Gabe added. But it will all be worth it when we'll have all the time for all of that when Loren is in good hands again. Mail was waiting for them on their beds when they got to their dorm. Frederick had a box from his parents, and Gabriel a sizable pile of letters from the last month. As Faye went to change into something cozy, Frederick unpacked the books. Packed books, holiday sweets, and, unfathomably, a ceramic frog painted in bright colors. What even is that? Gabe asked, sorting through his mail as Frederick started laughing. Eleanor and Claire's idea of a joke. Elle hates frogs, and when I was little, I used to make fun of her for it. So she and Claire decided to get back at me by dropping a dozen or so frogs in my bathtub. It was supposed to just startle me, but the kind of frog they got was mildly toxic, and I ended up covered in a rash from head to toe. And unfortunately, they had handled it too, so their hands were as red as I was, which made finding the culprits quite easy. It was a very itchy week all around. So they were caught red-handed? They asked, chuckling.
This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, this is why we can't have nice things. It's Gabriel's fault. Frederick snorted and placed the frog on his dresser. Exactly. So, what you got? Bills mostly. Housing costs don't stop just because I wasn't here. Gabe said with a sigh. I'll deal with them tomorrow. A thick, bulging envelope caught his eyes. On the front was the seal of the College of Science, embossed and painted red like the patron goddess of that branch of Tirp Mindell. Fed. He held it up, hands shaking. Shit, is that? Frederick hurried over, sitting down next to Gabriel on the bed and staring at the letter. Go on, open it. What if its denial letters are thin? That one's huge. If I get in but didn't get the scholarship, then you'll have 2 lifetimes worth of debt instead of 1. Plan's the same either way, right? Die trying to fix Loren or work for the island the rest of your days so they'll forgive your debt when you retire. This could be your chance to get into the branch you want, Gabriel. Open it. Frederick encouraged, then shouted, Avalor, get your ass in here. With trembling fingers, Gabriel cracked the wax seal and extracted the papers within. He squeezed his eyes shut, held his breath, then unfolded them in a rush. Read over my shoulder, tell me. Frederick's whoop of triumph was so loud it made Gabriel's ears ring. You did it! Really? Gabe's eyes shot open. There, on the top sheet in neat handwriting, were the words, Congratulations on your conditional acceptance to the College of Science with a full tuition scholarship. Whoa there, Frederick said as Gabriel swayed. I can't, I did it. See? Yes, you did. See, I told you you had nothing to worry about. Didn't you have like a solid inch-tall stack of letters of recommendation when you applied? Yeah, but nothing. Congratulations, Gabriel. Really. For all the Avalor and I tease, I'm so damn proud of you. And I know your family would be too. Frederick's arm around his shoulder squeezed tight. Tears sprang into Gabriel's eyes, but he blinked them away to read the letter again, still not quite believing the words. I'm going to be a Tirp Mindell certified doctor like my mother. Master Gabriel Mendelian, here we come. And more immediately, and maybe this will convince Robin to drop his endless campaign to get you into diplomacy. Frederick grinned at him, ruffling his hair, then once more yelled, "Where are you, Avalor? Get in!" Faye pushed the door open. She, too, had a letter in her hand, but far from pleased, there were tears streaming down her cheeks. Gabe sprang to his feet. "Faye, what's wrong?" "It's my dad," she said quietly. Worry pushed out all elation faster than someone blowing out a candle. Did something happen? Was there a raid? What? But her shake of the head interrupted his questions. "He hasn't been feeling well for a few months, and Mari finally convinced him to see a doctor. They aren't sure and won't know for certain until it advances, but they suspect it's a cancer of the liver." Her voice didn't shake or falter. It was emotionless and subdued, which from Faye worried Gabriel far more than shouting and screaming would have. She looked up at him, eyes reddened and bottom lip wobbling. "Gabe." He wrapped his arms around her. A moment later, Frederick joined him, both of them holding tight as Faye began to sob. Gabe wanted to read the letter, to ask 1,000 questions, to find out what they knew and how much time Cornan had, but with the way Faye was bawling, he knew it would be more bad news. He pressed his lips into her hair, whispering words of love and comfort until her sobs turned to sniffles. "They say he might still have a year or two, but there's not much they can do." Faye straightened a little. She didn't resist when Gabe pulled her down onto his bed, Frederick on her other side. "I know this sounds callous at the moment, but would money help? Better physicians? If there's anything my family or I can do, it's yours," Frederick said, face drawn with worry. "I doubt it, but thank you. If there is, I'll let you know," Faye replied, rubbing at her dripping nose. "Why is this happening? Haven't we lost enough?" Even though she asked it to the room at large, Gabe knew it was directed at him. Because of the homes they had both lost to Delirium, Gabe's family and Farian's mother, dead and deemed forgotten, and the countless friends who had perished in the rebellion's push for a better Loren. To lose Cornan too, especially to something as meaningless and random as disease, was cosmically unfair. "We should go back to Hardor," Gabe said. As he did, he surreptitiously slipped the papers with his admittance to the College of Science under his pillow. He said that under no condition were we allowed to run home before graduation. He knew we'd want to, Faye said, handing the letter to Gabriel. "He's right. We can't leave this close to the end of our studies, not without giving up everything we've been working towards. Having Tirabindel graduates leading the rebellion is too big a boon." "Farian, you don't have to be sensible right now. You're allowed to just want to go home and be with your dad instead of putting the rebellion first," Frederick hedged. She shook her head forcefully. "No, I'm not. He wants me to take over for him. Mari can't deal with the responsibility, and my sister hasn't ever wanted anything to do with it. Darren can hold us together for a little while, but he wants full-on revolution, not to work with Will. It has to be me, which means that whatever I'm feeling right now has to come second to what must be done. Otherwise, what kind of daughter would I be to Cornan Avalor? Then we finish out the year and come with you to Hardor," Gabe said, in a tone that broke no argument. Frederick eyed him questioningly, but Gabriel shook his head. No, he didn't want to talk about what that would mean for his own news, because Cornan had raised Gabriel like a son, and Farian was going to need his support. He could do his own grieving in private, both for the man whose time was limited and for the opportunity he could feel slipping through his fingers, even as he clutched Faye's tightly. "You'll need a second you can trust." Turning, Faye wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you. I didn't want to ask. I know how much you love it here, but I don't want to face this alone. You and I both know my sister won't be there." "Yeah," Gabe agreed, drawing the word out to hide his bitter displeasure at Faye's sister, and because it gave him time to push his own, more selfish grief further down, dreams of becoming a doctor slipping away. "And you know you'll never be rid of me, Avalor. We're stuck together as long as Master Denzel is alive and has rope. At this point, I don't think I would even know what to do with myself in a fight if I weren't literally tied to you," Frederick said, ruffling Faye's curls. "You get your ass handed to you, that's what," Faye said in a vain attempt at a joke. None of them laughed. Okay.
Are we getting there?
We're getting there.
Oh dear. I mean, you know, the court and stuff is like, I already know that he dies.
It's true. It's true. You didn't know that part.
It's sad, but you know, it's I've dealt with that.
We've grieved that. We've also like written countless scenes of exactly what Faye thinks of it, of how it happened.
Yeah.
Anyways, chapter 4, Depression. It was late, and Gabriel ought to have been sleeping. But instead, he slipped into the dimly lit room that had once been the hospital cafeteria. The tables had been dragged outside to make room for the pallets filled with patients. Only 2 doctors moved between the hundred or more beds, never dispensing more than a sip of water or a handkerchief to wipe away sweat and tears. These were the people who were too poor to afford care, or too sick for Tirett Mindell to waste charity on. Most were either children who couldn't be past 6 or 7, or gray-haired grandparents who would never more be able to lift them into their arms again. Even with the windows thrown wide, the lack of a breeze kept the room sweltering. The air stank so badly that Gabriel, even used to the stench of the pyres and the sick, had to cover his nose with his sleeve. Eyes watering, he looked around, squinting through the dimness. Was he too late? Gabe walked between the rows of dying, wasting fever patients, searching for Tom's scraggly gray hair and tangled wild hair. At last, in the far corner, he found him. Tom lay in the curved, tilted posture so many adopted, back arched up and legs locked in a rictus of agony. He needed physical therapy, herbs to relax his taut, degrading muscles, and ice to soothe the inflammation. Instead, he had been given a bucket to puke into and a meager tray of food that lay untouched. Gabe knelt down next to Tom, placing a hand over the old man's where it clutched at the blankets. Hey there, Grumpy Pants. How are you feeling? Tom opened his eyes, red and clouded. For a moment, it seemed like he would not recognize Gabriel, then his face contorted into a sneer. I thought I'd finally been rid of you when they brought me to this fine, upstanding guest house. We don't want your kind here mucking up the place. The last few words were interrupted by coughs that brought up blood, spattering onto Tom's already dirty skin as he covered his mouth with his inner wrist. Collapsing back, he fixed Gabriel with tearful eyes. When will it be over, do you think? These useless idiots be avoiding all my questions, but you'll give it to me straight, right? Gabriel wanted to look away, to hide the pain in his gaze, but didn't. Tom needed the truth. The platitudes of the healers might be calming, but Gabe could understand the desire for honesty. Not for another week or 2. Wasting fever kills slowly. That's the worst part of it. I don't think you'll make it to midwinter, though. Huh. Don't think you get to decide what's the worst part when you ain't got it. But it's not being able to take a piss without someone helping me that's the worst. Didn't mean this when I used to say I wanted a sweet young thing to touch my... Keep going like that, and I'll remember you as a real creep, Gabe warned, forcing a smile. The joke, as strained as it was, did not seem to amuse Tom. It did make him take Gabe's hand in his frail one, though. But you will, right? Remember me, that is? Don't think anyone else will. No one's left. I had a family once, but they all died too, one by one like this. For so long I thought I'd been better, been stronger than all them others who got the fever. Tom's voice wavered, then a tear rolled down his smudged cheeks, and in a wheezing whisper he croaked, I'm all alone, please. My name's Tom Riel, Tomriell. I know I ain't done nothing to deserve it. I don't do my devotions or give to them that's fortunate, but you're a smart and healthy lad. You'll make it out. Please remember me. I don't want my soul to die too if I ain't gonna make it. Please. Gabriel stared down at the pile of schoolwork Robin had given him and felt tears bead at the corner of his eyes. What was the fucking point? He had been at it for nearly 4 hours, tucked into an out-of-the-way corner of the library where he went when even Faye and Fedric's presence was more than he wanted. That had happened more and more the last few years as his course load grew even heavier. All for nothing. The pile of assignments taunted him. Rifting, diplomacy, medicine, history, even a course on damn Mondaire culture that their weapons master had inexplicably insisted on. Almost 6 years of working himself to death in and out of the classroom and doing his homework in the clinic's break room, and for what? Why was it that every time Gabriel got the least bit ahead, the world found a way to knock him down? Why was Mark Lyrian, a man who slaughtered his citizens, still healthy and alive when Cornan Avalor, a legitimate hero of the people, was dying? And why was Gabriel doing fucking schoolwork? Tyrant Mindell had the money and medicine to fix Muriel's wasting fever crisis, even if the government refused to, but they didn't. They could have aided the rebellion in Lorin, but they wouldn't. Gabe had once hoped to use his in with the island to help people. The bitter truth was that it would never be enough, because the system was broken and the universe existentially unfair. Why am I here? I should have stayed in Muriel to help. They still needed people. Cornan needs people. This whole place is a fucking waste of time. That didn't stop him from continuing to write. Page after page, Gabe read, took notes, answered questions, and laid out arguments for future essays. The whole while, he itched to pull out the jar of Sarandella from his pocket, but didn't. It might have helped with his shifting focus, but he couldn't fucking afford to get hooked on the drug. Not when he'd have to start paying back his loans on an academy graduate's potential salary instead of that of a fully accredited island doctor. It was nearing dusk when he returned home, his pack heavy with the books he'd need to get through in the coming days. He'd intended to drop it off, then head straight to dinner. Instead, he found Faye waiting for him in his room, holding his admission letter. Gabriel James, we need to talk. Here we go. With a slump to his shoulders and a heavy heart, Gabe shut the door and steeled himself for the fight he could see brewing behind Farian's tearful, determined eyes. How are you holding up? Tellen asked, sitting down in the living room next to Gabe, who was carefully measuring out his nightly dose of Sarandella from the tiny jar. He was down to nearly a quarter of what he had taken in Muriel, and was tempted to go up again just this once. He wasn't going to sleep anyways. The soothing relief it would provide to both physical and emotional pain sounded great right around then. Like shit, to be frank. Faye finally asked about the admission letter and spent the last 2 hours trying to convince me she doesn't need me to watch her back in Hardor and that I should stay. Gabe pushed the golden sap around in the jar, teeth clenched. Farian had gone to talk to Robin about making arrangements to withdraw her applications to the College of Discipline half an hour before, but their disagreement still hung in the air. And I wish she wouldn't. It makes it harder. Have you considered that she might be right? Faye's a survivor. She would be fine, and I'd be there to keep an eye on her. If you were in the colleges, you could always take a semester of leave once things got bad. They're way more lenient after Course 6 about how long your studies take, Frederick prompted, using the exact same logic Faye had tried. Gabe shot him a nasty glare. Stop it. I've made up my mind. Honestly, maybe this is for the best. I love this place, and it's blinded me to the whole reason why I came here to begin with, to learn enough to defeat Mark Lyrian. I'm not going to do that by becoming a doctor. The rebellion would be rather fucked without doctors. Don't sell yourself short, Frederick replied, not rising to the bait of Gabriel's anger. Have you considered that your role might not be on the front lines? No. Annoyance flaring hotter, Gabriel took his previous full dose of Sarandella plus whatever clung to the measuring spoon and pushed the jar away, slumping back against the couch. Fuck it. Today was not the day to cut back. Gabe, I said no, Tellen. You don't get it. Lyrian didn't show up one day to slaughter your parents and everyone you knew and cared about. He didn't leave you an orphan on the streets with a baby sister to take care of. Yes, I want to continue in school. I want to be a doctor like my mother, but I'll do it after Mark Lyrian is fucking dead and buried. I'm not going to put all that responsibility on Farian while I stay here with my nose in a book. Gabriel reached for the glass that still held a finger's worth of brandy and downed most of it to clear the sticky, sappy taste of the Sarandella from his mouth. Frederick reached forward and snagged the bottle, placing it on the floor out of Gabriel's reach. Say that again when you aren't relying on Sarandella and alcohol to hold yourself together. Faye might be too distracted to notice how much you've been drinking since you got back, but I haven't been. I don't think you're in a clear enough mind frame to be making these kinds of decisions. Why don't you put it off until you're done with the Sarandella and have actually dealt with whatever you're trying to drown out? Fuck off, Tellin. Can't do that. You're my best friend, the nobleman said. Fine, then I will. With a huff, Gabriel pushed up from the couch and slipped on his boots. Without bothering to tie the laces, he grabbed his coat and walked to the door. Frederick didn't follow, and Faye was still with Robin, so after stomping around through the fresh dusting of snow until his annoyance had cooled off enough, he headed in the direction of the clinic. There was probably work to be done, and he could use something dull and repetitive right around then. Maybe that would ease some of the built-up energy coiled in his every muscle and let his mind find a little peace. Unfortunately, not 2 minutes after walking through the doors of the building that had been his workplace and refuge for nearly 6 years, Gabe had to walk right out again, eyes stinging after one of the senior physicians congratulated him on his early admittance to the College of Science. In the end, after a long walk, he ended up at the mock dragon yards. There were always young mocks in need of flight practice and exercise, so when Gabriel asked if he could go flying, the stable master pointed him in the direction of a young female dragon and a saddle. It took a few minutes and a fish from the feed bin to make introductions and get the skittish creature to let Gabriel saddle her, but after that they took to the air. The moment they were up, Gabe let go of the reins, leaned back on the dragon's scaly spine, and closed his eyes. The frigid wind whipped at his hair and exposed skin, every snowflake a stinging projectile as the mock picked up speed. She soared up, jostling Gabriel in the saddle with every powerful wing beat, until they broke into the low-hanging clouds and started to soar. Everything went silent, other than the quiet rustle of cloth and open leathery wings. Gabriel extended his arms, flexing every finger wide. Melting snowflakes beaded on his cheeks and caught in his lashes, steam from his breath billowing behind him. He breathed in deep, held it, then exhaled. His mind stilled. I'm going to miss this. Were you flying? Faye asked when Gabriel snuck past Robin's door and into her room well past midnight. Aren't you freezing? I needed to clear my mind. A lot has happened over the last couple days, Gabe said, pulling off his sweater, then sat down at the edge of the bed. How was your talk with Robin? Faye shifted to pull her knees up to her chest, resting her chin on them. Her eyes were dry but red, as though she had been crying earlier. A pang of guilt shot through Gabriel for not being there. He's going to look into deferral for both of us on our loans. He said he couldn't guarantee it, but that he'd try to give us at least a little time. He was really upset, though, she said. I should have gone to talk to him with you. Gabe scooted in so he could rest against the wall and pull Faye close. It's fine. She leaned her head on Gabe's shoulder, then let out a long breath. Gabriel, I'm sorry. I'm not going to try to talk you out of this again, but I'm sorry for so much. Yeah, me too. They sat in silence for a time, each lost in their own thoughts. At last, Faye said, Frederick mentioned that you were in bad shape earlier. Of course he did. He's watching out for you, Gabriel James, that's all. And I think he's right to worry. I know you've not been sleeping well ever since coming back from Muriel. I didn't want to bring it up because, well, I know you'll tell us when you're ready. I just wanted to let you know that I won't break or anything if you do. You've been very supportive and sweet, and I appreciate it, but I love you. It's fine if we're both a mess. You don't have to be all right. Gabe snorted. When did you become so mature? I distinctly remember when you used to yell at the world anytime you had a strong feeling instead of actually talking about it. Yeah, well, the world yelled back, didn't it? Faye poked him gently. Gabriel, you're deflecting. Mm-hmm. Yes, I am. Thank you, though. You're not wrong, and neither is Fed, much to my chagrin. I'll talk when I've sorted this mess of feelings into words, but it hasn't happened yet. I was really counting on this week being a reprieve from the bad and an opportunity to process. That didn't exactly happen. Faye pulled the blanket over both their laps, fussing with it a bit. Tomorrow is a day of remembrance. I know you don't usually come to the temple with us. Even if it's coming to an end, this place has meant a lot to you, and it might do you good to be able to leave something of yourself behind, of yourself and those who you remember behind. We'll see, Gabe replied. After a moment of thought, He didn't dismiss it out of hand like he might have at another time, which surprised him enough to add, I suppose it might not be the worst idea to visit a temple. I don't know that what I saw in Muriel strengthened my belief in the gods, because what sort of benevolent beings would allow so much suffering to occur? It's a fucking joke, but I did see how much people cared about being remembered. It brought them together and gave them a reason to speak about their lives. He had learned so many things about his patients, about their families, their hopes and fears. It made it hurt worse than when they went, but it was also beautiful. They took comfort in their oaths and their devotions, even while they were dying. With a sigh, Gabe leaned his head against Faye's. Sometimes I wish I could believe that way. Faye squeezed her eyes shut. That's what I want to do with my dad. I want to be there so I can ask him to tell me all his stories one last time. I'm going to write them down if I can. If we don't manage to fulfill my dad's goals by the time he leaves, I at least want him to be remembered after. I want his dreams to keep living. Maybe then I won't feel like he's really gone. She turned to face Gabriel, pulling both his hands up to her lips. I love you, you know. I think you're an idiot for giving up so much to come home with me, but I'm so, so grateful that I didn't have to ask, because this is going to hurt more than I know how to express. Pointless or not, though, I need to say this once. Gabriel, as much as I want you with me, you don't have to come. He shook his head, a sad smile turning up only the corners of his lips. I would never forgive myself if I did not. The Academy will always be here when the time is right. The rebellion and Cornan are the only reason I'm alive, though. It's time to show my gratitude and give back what I can. We always knew where we were headed, my love. This is just sooner, and for a sadder reason than expected. Last little bit. Chapter 5. Acceptance. It will be today, said a medic who had spoken to Gabriel a few times while he came and went, visiting the old man holding on to life with an iron grip. I've arranged for someone to cover your shift. I know we're told not to get attached to them, but it happens to the best of us. Gabriel had wondered how she had known death was upon Tom, until he saw him, that was. The gruff vagrant lay still on his cot, only his chest rising and falling in shallow flutterings like the wings of a drowning moth. His legs had wasted away to half of what they had been 4 weeks earlier. Beneath his sunken eyes, Tom's cheeks were hollow, dark brown skin sallow, bruised, and graying. His lips moved, muttering the same hoarse words over and over. His name, Tom Riel. He's been doing that all day, every day. He can't sleep at night until we've repeated it back to him a dozen or more times, one of the new nurses said. She had not yet developed the haunted, haggard stare of those who had been there longer. Gabe knelt by the Tom's cot, nodding in weary thanks to the nurse. Hey there, old man. Tom barely managed to crack open his eyes. His lips moved, but nothing but raspy, rattling breath came out. Gabe took his bony hand, squeezing it tight. Guess what? I finally talked them into getting you some more medicine. It's the good stuff, too. You'll be high as a kite and giggling in 15 minutes tops. Tom coughed in what might have been a chuckle. He cracked his mouth open as Gabriel pulled a small bottle of laudanum from his pocket. It didn't have much left in it, which was why he'd managed to filch it without anyone noticing, but hopefully it would be enough so that Tom wouldn't be in so much pain as he passed. He shouldn't have taken it and would probably get in trouble if they found out, but Gabriel had honestly stopped caring about how this trip would affect his career. How could one stare at devastation on the scale and think of anything so small? The old man swallowed and smacked his lips, making Gabriel chuckle through the tears running down his cheeks. Glad you're enjoying yourself. Probably delighted that I'm here crying like a baby, right? Tom inclined his chin in a nod. Gabe rolled his eyes. Knew it. The old man tried to speak again. Gabe leaned closer and thought he heard the word, gotcha. Then, a few breaths later, dying, aren't I? Gabe squeezed his hand. Yes, I think this is the end of the line, but I'll remember you, all right? Tom Riel, the gruffest, most ornery patient I ever had the privilege of calling a friend. I'll remember you. Will it hurt? He asked. I don't know, Tom, but I don't think so. The medicine I gave you will make you sleepy. At some point it will just end, and the pain will be over for good. You'll be at peace. Thank you. Tom closed his eyes. Will you be here? I think I'm ready, but I don't want to die alone. Gabe wiped away the tears blurring his visions and leaned down, pressing a gentle kiss to Tom's forehead. I'll stay for as long as you do, and carry your memory with me when I leave. You won't be alone. Not ever again. Dinner before the Vigil of Remembrance was every bit as joyous as the night would be somber. Despite everything that had happened, Gabriel found it hard not to laugh and smile as the handful of students from all different grades joined their teachers in cooking and eating a veritable feast. Peeling potatoes right between a master of diplomacy and a first-year student was bizarre enough to delight him. But they all knew their way around the kitchen was the thing he loved most about this island. Everyone started at the bottom. No graduate had gotten there without their share of scrubbing pots and mopping floors. Some of the rifters who had stayed on rolled up the sleeves of their gold uniforms and performed magic tricks for the younger students and teachers' children. Faye and Frederick pulled out their instruments and played a handful of rambunctious tunes, and Master Denzel, the weapons master, told a story about how he had accidentally convinced a ship full of pirates that he was a sea god while traveling during his younger years. Mulled hard cider was passed around among the students, and Robin had rolled his eyes and nodded when Faye, Fed, and Gabriel had sidled up to the pot. Go on, then. It's not like your whole class hasn't been sneaking liquor into the dorm since fourth year. Don't think I don't know about it. So it was full, light-hearted, and happier than he had any right to be that Gabriel skipped towards the temple, arm in arm with his two best friends. Faye let out a giggly shriek as she half-tripped, causing both boys to stumble to catch her. The group walking over was spread out but boisterous. As the lights of the cafeteria faded behind them, though, the levity seemed to drop away with every step. First, the laughter died, then the discussion, too, faded. From inside the tall temple tower, the haunting hymn of remembrance carried through the still, cold air. Faye leaned in closer, and Frederick and Gabriel joined hands, the crunch of their footsteps the only sound in the stillness of the night. The stairs up to the door were covered with lit candles, and people sat upon them, sipping hot beverages or staring out into the darkness. Some had tears rolling down their cheeks, and a few spoke to each other. No one, though, talked above a whisper. Within, even more had gathered. Gabriel recognized vendors from the night market and locals from the town of Tiret, scattered between people in the gray robes of the College of Theology. He shivered as he passed over the threshold into the echoing vastness of the temple. Other than for classes, Gabriel had rarely entered the sacred space, preferring to leave it to the people for whom it meant something. That evening, though, the cool temple air seemed to clear the lingering smoke from his lungs. The statues of the 6 dragon gods worshipped on the island were lit by more candles, each one placed on the divot created by a carved stone scale. In the center of the 6-sided cathedral, an altar held a shallow, intricately carved golden bowl, as wide as Gabriel was tall. Faye led them towards it slowly, careful not to disturb or get in the way of anyone on their knees in prayer. The music drifted down from the walkways and balconies high above. Gabriel didn't immediately recognize the words, though he'd heard the tune from far away every midwinter. Frederick must have noticed his concentrated frown, because he leaned in to whisper, "They're reciting the names of the dead. The song starts at dusk and continues until dawn each day of midwinter. It's everyone who the island has been asked to remember, so their souls may live on." At last, they reached the altar. Faye gave Gabriel's hand a squeeze, then let go in order to walk forward, bow her head, and take a slip of green paper and a pen from the stack that lay above the carved oath of Gullion the Green. Frederick, likewise, picked up a white piece of paper and used the altar as a writing surface to scribble something down. "I'm surprised and pleased to see you here, Gabriel. I had not realized you intended to join us for our devotions this year," Robin said, catching up to him. The Tertium master wore his most formal robes, the long black vest of the College of Academics brushing the floor. Gabe looked up at his mentor, shifting uncomfortably. "I'm still not sure. I was thinking about it, though." "Would you like to share your thoughts while we walk? This might take some time. I know Miss Avalor especially has many names she writes down each year, along with her devotional pledge," Robin offered. Gabe nodded, and together they started winding their way through the temple. The Tertian was quiet, and Gabriel had studied under him long enough to know that he was waiting for a student to decide where to begin. After some time, Gabriel asked, "Do you actually think that souls live on after death, Master Robin?" The middle-aged man seemed to ponder the question, then replied, "That is a difficult one to answer, because it's so multifaceted a topic. Do I believe that those who pass from this world retain a consciousness after death? Perhaps. I suppose we are doomed never to know that until it's our time. Likewise, I often wonder whether we make too much of a distinction between burning and burying, for surely our ashes return to the earth too, and in time they are buried under loam and plants, nourishing the land the same way as those who are buried and forgotten. However heretical, I doubt anyone who has heard of someone innocent who has been buried has not questioned that part of our faith." Robin's pointed look at Gabriel had Gabriel glancing down, color rising in his cheeks. "I admit that is part of the reason I fought so hard not to be part of all this. And understandably so. For if the priests are correct, many you have loved are stuck in limbo, unable to find peace, but also unable to visit those who remember them at midwinter. I am sure that must make those who love them all the more prone to disbelieving anything the Innis faith teaches. If the priests are wrong about that, after all, perhaps they're wrong about all of it. Am I getting close?" Gabe nodded. "That my mother didn't believe." "No, she wouldn't have," Robin said. "Why do you say that?" Gabriel's parents had lived in a remote village halfway across the world. Was it because Nilenia had been so close to the Mondaire that Robin thought that? Most of my town was Zionist. I didn't mean to cause offense. I simply meant that not many 12-year-olds arrive here with an active antagonism towards the gods. Usually it comes from a parent, Robin explained. But you asked me about whether I believe souls live on after death. Let me try to answer the actual question instead of talking in circles, as your Farian so often accuses me of. Gabe reached up to rub the back of his neck. "Yeah, I keep asking her to be more polite, but if it hasn't stuck yet, I doubt it will. Her stubbornness is part of her strength. However frustrating it can be, she is who she is because of it. The oath of the green fits her well. She is a person that requires clear rules to her world. As such, on this day every year, you will always find her as she is now, writing down the same list of names and once more dedicating herself to the belief that if she does her best and works her hardest, she will make a positive impact in the world. To her, I expect, the souls of those who have passed before her are another in a long line of responsibilities. Their afterlives literally depend on her remembering them. With this news of her father, I'm sure it is a comforting faith. It is not one I share, though. The Black Dragon's whole oath is about remembrance, if you look between the lines. I build with strong foundations, stone by stone. In questions, not answers, will my wisdom grow, and in listening, not speaking, will it expand. I dedicate my life to the pursuit and sharing of knowledge, so that when my days come to an end, others may follow in my footsteps." "So you think you'll live on with every new generation that learns what you've researched?" Gabe asked. Robin nodded. "I hope so, but as I said, I don't know that I believe that I will retain consciousness. More that, as long as that which I have taught lives on, I will still be with all those who learn it. My own personal faith is that the dead we remember live in us, not with us. Their lessons, their wisdom, and yes, even their faults and follies. They are all lessons, and so long as we remember them and learn from them, in a very real way, those we lost do live on." Gabe pondered that as they continued walking through the vast cathedral, weaving around people in prayer. Finally, he said, "And what about those who no one remembers?" While I was in Muriel, a man with no family was admitted to our ward. He was poor and alone, and the whole time he was dying, what concerned him the most was that no one would remember him. He made me repeat his name back to him over and over again. It was the only thing that soothed him in his last few days. Do you think his soul would have been lost if he had died in his home instead of making it to the clinic where I could learn his name? Because so many died like that. During the worst of it, they were finding bodies on the street so wasted away from the fever and bloated by rot that they could not identify them. With a long sigh, Robin bowed his head. The teachings of the church would make us believe his soul would have been lost if his name is not remembered tonight and every future midwinter. Fortunately, Ionism also embraces the questioning and analysis of their dogma. So what do you think? Would this patient of yours have been forgotten if you had never met him? Would his soul be lost if he had been among those buried instead of burned, as I know so many have been each year the wasting fever ravages Muriel when they run out of wood? No, Gabe said without hesitation. Robin quirked his eyebrows, a cue to explain his reasoning. Even if I had known his name, I don't think I'll ever forget the toll on human life, and neither will any doctor who worked there. I might forget the individual faces one day, but I'll never forget that each one of them was an individual person, not just a number. The same with every war or famine or slaughter. Even if I didn't know anyone involved, their deaths still affect history. They still mean something to me, and deserve the dignity of being remembered. They're as important as the movers and shakers of the world as far as I'm concerned, possibly more so. Robin gave Gabriel's messy hair a fond ruffle. Good answer, though it saddens me that you've already seen so much loss and injustice in your young life that you've already come to that conclusion. It takes many people decades to look beyond themselves and their own loved ones and have enough compassion to care about those who are forgotten, not just those who are remembered. More importantly, to listen to that which their passings can teach us. They walked on in silence, returning to where they had started eventually. Faye and Frederick were still at the altar. Gabe hesitated, then asked, "So how do I do this? I don't have a god I'm devoted to." "Pick the one that speaks to your heart the most today, and worry about a lifetime devotion when and if it will ever serve you. I am, of course, biased towards the black in matters of remembrance, but perhaps the red's oath would better serve you? It is, after all, the one the College of Science has embraced." Gabe glanced towards the side of the altar, where the oath of the red was carved. "Though born a seed, I will sink roots and rise towards the sky. No storm can break me, for always will I bend and grow. May all be welcomed in my shade, where side by side we craft a better world. Let our names live on in our creations." "No, that doesn't quite fit me. I don't want to build a better world, just help fix the one we have," Gabe said. "The green and the blue are both good, but don't speak to me either. The white, perhaps, like Mr. Tellon? Altruism, fortitude, and humility are all traits that I think you demonstrate often, and make me very proud to know you," Robin said, with a small but warm smile. Gabriel blushed but shook his head. "Not the white either, god of the Lyrian and all that." "Ah, yes, quite right. Then I suggest, despite your general antagonism to the Church and the College of Theology, to perhaps consider the silver that was. The forgotten I will remember, the lost I will lead, the suffering I will comfort. I shall not fear failure, for though I may fall, I will rise stronger. May my triumphs make me brave, and my trials make me kind." Gabriel thought about it for some time. Finally, he nodded. "Yes, I think I like that one better. Thank you, Master Robin." "Think nothing of it, Gabriel. It's my honor and privilege to educate and see my students learn and grow. Go on, take a piece of paper and write down what you wish to be remembered in the coming year. If you wish it, consider also adding a devotion. It is good sometimes to have a task to guide us, something that can lend us strength and focus in hard times, and for which you wish to be remembered after death. Even if it's the only year you ever do it, it might bring you some peace." Robin gave Gabriel a little push forward. With careful steps, he approached the altar. Awkward and unsure, he shifted his weight from side to side as he waited for his turn. At last, Gabe was able to take a piece of gray paper. Not wanting to take up space at the altar when it didn't mean as much to him, Gabe retreated to a quiet corner of the temple to fill his sheet out. Using the base of a column as a flat surface to write on, he pulled out the nub of a pencil from his pocket, set it to the sheet, took a deep breath, and in careful, neat script began to write, each letter meticulously neat and legible. T-O-M-R-I-E-L-L. The piece of gray paper Gabriel brought back to the altar was so covered in writing it looked black. Tom Riel's name had been written in large letters in the center, the only one Gabe had intended to jot down. But once he had started, he'd found himself incapable of stopping. Every patient whose name he could remember had joined Tom's. Then, like a dam breaking, other names too. His parents, his brother, the baker who had made every loaf of bread he had eaten until the age of 8, the childhood friends whose faces would never age along with him. Even his favorite goat from their herd, though he doubted the church would appreciate it. It didn't matter. Gabriel wasn't writing it for the temple or the gods, but for himself, a reminder of what had been lost. Tears coated his cheeks in salty trails and stung his eyes as he placed the folded sheet of paper in the basin. It slithered down the pounded gold sides to join thousands of others, many as full as his own. He looked down at the words carved on the altar where he stood. Some of those around him were murmuring the litany of their gods, renewing their devotions for another year. Gabriel had not included a devotion on his list of names to be remembered. It had felt hollow and selfish somehow to ask that the gods in the church remember him for his deeds when Gabriel did not worship them. Yet, as he stood there, part of him regretted it. Wouldn't it be simpler to believe? To imagine his family was there, watching over him? That Tom was floating around with them, getting into a row with anyone who would listen? The dead were supposed to be closer to the living than ever at midwinter, the veil between them thin enough to feel their love as ephemeral caresses against one's soul. If he could will himself to have faith that there was a greater plan, would Cornyn's impending death be less painful? Would the prospect of leaving this place he had loved be easier to swallow? It comforted Faye. He knew that. He'd seen her recite her God's oath each time she had to really dig deep and stick to her convictions. It gave her strength, so why couldn't it give Gabriel any? Maybe it was something that grew over time. He didn't believe, and wasn't sure anything would ever change that, but perhaps it was worth to at least have a focus. Words he could cling to when lost, or at least try. Breathing in deep, he quietly recited, "The forgotten I will remember, the lost I will lead, the suffering I will comfort. I shall not fear failure, for though I may fall, I will rise stronger. May my triumphs make me brave, and my trials make me kind." Frederick and Faye were waiting for him by the doors of the temple. Faye held her arms open to Gabriel and squeezed him tight when he hugged her. When they let go, Frederick wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Let's go somewhere we can be alone to light our candles and hold vigil. Temples are always too crowded." Gabriel was only too happy to comply. Even before Frederick took the first turn, Gabe knew where he was taking them. There was a sandy little beach tucked away by the lake and too far for most academy students to bother with. Faye and Gabriel had found it first year while wandering through the woods on a plant identification assignment and had claimed it as their own. Unbeknownst to them at the time, it was also where Frederick ran off to when he was frustrated with the other nobles always peppering him with questions about the princess living with his parents. They had run into each other one day, and it had been the first time the three of them had really talked. Frederick had been a wreck, though he had never explained why. Gabe had offered to play him at Seven Rivers, and Faye had talked them into a swim. Within a month, the three of them had been fast friends, although it had been a while longer before they acted that way anywhere else by the lake. The beach was dusted in snow and fallen leaves when they arrived. The willow tree stood naked and curved like the back of an old man, casting a mosaic pattern of weaving shadows in the light from the moon. Faye went to collect wood for a fire, which Gabriel lit with a tiny rift that exhausted most of his magical reserves. Frederick pulled out a flask of spiced rum. They sat shoulder to shoulder against a fallen log, staring out over the darkened water and passing the flask around in silence. After some time, Faye laid her head against Gabriel's upper arm. "I'm going to miss this place. But at least we're leaving together. It wouldn't be the same without you two here." Gabe said, glancing over Farian to smile at Fedric. It's been a good 6 years, right? Best of my life, Fedric answered. May the next few be even better, sadness and all. I hope so. Faye sighed, then looked up to Gabriel. Robin approached me while you were working on your list of names. He's talked to the dean. They're going to give us a deferral on our loans and your scholarship. I was expecting a few months, but they're giving us 10 years. What? Gabe's eyes flew wide. That's long enough? Hopefully, when I met with Robin, I told him how much this opportunity meant to you. I asked if he would be willing to ask the College of Science to hold your place. It took some doing, and I had to renegotiate my loan interest significantly to get us the deferment, but he did it. He's giving us the time we need to fix Lorraine, and after, you can return here, Gabriel. She was smiling, but her eyes were sad. I couldn't let you give up everything for me. It wasn't right. When you say renegotiate significantly, Fedric began, but Faye shushed him with a shake of the head. I'm never getting out of debt with the island anyway. It doesn't matter. Besides, I'm counting on Gabriel becoming a Mendelian and happily working as a doctor in some fancy hospital until we're old and gray and our debts are forgiven. I'm not entirely impractical and generous, you know. Gabriel was still too stunned to speak, so he kissed her instead. When he pulled back, he managed to murmur, You are a marvel, Farian Abelard. Thank you. If you're willing to give up all of this for my sake without me having to ask, the least I can do is make sure that one day you'll get it back. I have a condition, though. I'm keeping you off the front lines of the fight so that you can actually survive to return. You can work for the rebellion as what you are, a medic. That's non-negotiable. I won't lose you to the fight, too. I can deal with that, Gabriel said, head still spinning. I love you, Faye. I love you, too. Both of you. Oh, good, because I was starting to feel like a third wheel in this conversation, Fedric teased. And I'm rather cross, because I was halfway through writing a long entreaty to my parents to match Gabe's scholarship if he ever came back, since he's losing out on it to join the cause. You've taken the wind right out of my sails. It's well known that everything you try to do I can do better, Tilden, Faye said with a grin. Gabriel, meanwhile, was back to speechless, tears welling up even though he had thought himself cried out. I don't know what I did to deserve you, either of you. Mostly be cute, Faye said. Put up with me, Fedric said, at about the same time, and never once complain that I snore in the 5+ years we've shared a room. All three of them laughed, and then they cried. There wasn't much else to say. They sat around the fire until the flask Fedric had brought was empty. Then Faye pulled out 3 small candles. Shall we? After hunting around for driftwood and affixing the candles to 3 nice-sized pieces, they lit them off a branch for the fire and walked to the edge of the lake. A thin crust of ice had formed by the shoreline, but it was only a foot or so wide. One by one they knelt and set their candles on the calm water, sending ripples and reflections dancing across the surface. They stood together, arm in arm, as the lights bobbed and swayed, slowly drawn out into the lake by the current of a nearby tributary. Faye was the one who started the recitation. I remember my mother, Sarah, and my grandmother, Fatima. I remember those who died in the razing of Delford, and all those who've lost their lives trying to make Lorraine a better place. May your memories guide me and be a blessing to all those who remember you. Fedric took over. I remember my grandparents, Federica and Sean, and my ancestors before them as listed in the Book of Names of Houses Tellen and Savannah, and my cousins of House Lyrian, Ondai, Annika, and Circada. I remember my tutor, Liam Arlen, and Atticus Oswald, who died in the service of the next king, my friend and cousin Willem. I remember all those who died in the Western revolts and who passed away without being able to see their children one last time. Fedric finished, tears in his eyes, and turned to Gabriel, who usually did not participate. Gabe cleared his throat, a lump of emotion making it hard to speak. If the gods are real, they know who I remember, but there is someone I need to talk about. It might take some time, though, and I might be a mess after. Is that all right? We have all night, Fedric encouraged. Take your time, Gabriel. Is this about Miriel? Gabe nodded, tilting his head up to look at the sky. It was full of clouds, not smoke, but he could still see the glow of the pyres from the day before his departure, when they had burned the last of the dead Gabe had tended to. Tom's body had been one among dozens on the fire, unrecognizable once the flames had devoured his wispy gray hair. I haven't wanted to talk about it. I still don't want to, but I think I need to start, or will keep haunting me. I'm glad I went, and I'm glad I saw what I did, but it was the hardest 4 weeks of my life. Even after millennia, I had anger at Mark Lyrian to hold me together, but there, it was just grief and despair. We were fighting a force of nature, and we were losing. It didn't matter how many we saved, because the beds always filled up again. It didn't matter how hard we worked, because there wasn't enough Sarandella, and there weren't enough doctors to make a difference. I'd feel so much guilt every time I'd take a dose, and every time I closed my eyes, because what if that would have been the difference between someone's life and death? They warned us about it on the way over, but nothing could have prepared any of us for it. I thought I was ready after visiting the raised villages. Gabriel looked back down at the candles, drifting further and further away. I wasn't. I'm sorry, Faye said, placing a hand on his elbow. Gabe covered it with his own, squeezing tight. Do you regret going? Not for a minute. It's what I meant to do, Faye. I know that. It was horrible, but it reminded me of the world outside this island. These years have been precious, but part of me is glad that we get to leave, especially if it's not forever. The world is broken out there. Really fucking broken. Bad enough that it got to me, even after everything I've gone through. I really hadn't expected that. He rubbed at one of the old burn scars that covered most of his right side, still feeling the phantom pain of the fire, even though it had been a decade since he'd been caught in those flames. I don't know how, but we need to fix it. The fact that doctors and nurses were working so hard to stop something that the powers on high could have mitigated is the same issue facing Loren. Disease, famine, war, they're all facets of each other, aren't they? They all cost lives that will never be remembered as more than a number. Killing Mark Lyrian is how we can start to fix that, but it's only the beginning. I want to find a way to do more, to actually make a difference every single day, for the rest of my life, even knowing the cost. Fedric wrapped an arm around Gabe's shoulders. If anyone can, it's you, my friend. And we'll be right there by your side like always. Right, Avalor? Right. Loren first, the world second if we make it out alive. Faye leaned in too. And fuck anyone who tries to stop us. That's the Faye we know and love. I was starting to worry there for a while with this newfound thoughtfulness. Gabriel teased, then pressed a kiss into her curls. So, who's this person you want to tell us about? One of your patients? Fedric asked, turning to lead them to their seats by the fire. Gabriel waited until they were once more seated, watching the dancing flames, and cuddled close between his two best friends. He stared out over the lake, thinking about all the ways this place had shaped him, and all the memories he'd carry with him when they left. Neither Faye nor Fedric hurried him, minutes passing to the metronome of lapping waves and wind crying through the trees. Finally, Gabriel looked into the fire and said, his name was Tom Riel, and he was a friend of mine. The end.
That, yeah. I'm fine.
It's a 2020 story, folks.
Yeah. I did like something I had never thought about before is the fact that when there's a wasting fever outbreak and there's, this much increased demand for Sarandala, which is super rare and, pretty much only comes from the rainforest, and that there must be just there's some human rights violations going on.
There are so many human rights
acquiring that.
I didn't even get into that story. Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, that's
Sarandella politics are so complicated.
Yeah.
Happy midwinter 2020. to all the people surviving or dealing with loss on this plague-filled winter day. Owen, it's raining on your face. You should get an umbrella. They're very cheap. You can get one at the dollar store. The problem will be over. It's true. Don't go to the dollar store. Do not go out of your house. It is scary out there, folks. Thank you. I would just like to thank all the frontline workers. If you happen to read this or watch this video, you are heroes. I had a lot of emotions reading and writing this. It was the story that had to be told this 2020. I have some just death.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting experience writing the second book, because a major part of the second book has been a relapse for one of the characters. And is dealing with wasting fever. And Gabriel gets to be the doctor on call for that. And it was already part of the plot before 2020, and 2020 has made that part of the plot much more heartfelt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, folks, thank you for watching. This is not the usual
I feel like usually if I'm like doing a listening thing, I try to like react more, but I'm just gonna sit here looking solemn, and that's how I feel.
It is raining inside Owen's showing room. Owen, get your roof checked. Or get a hanky. Probably should have warned people to like get some tissues. Oops, my mistake. You didn't cry.
I mean,
Tobias, congratulations. You made it.
I didn't. I usually. I feel like for me to get to really get into it, has to be
I decided to punch like the world in the feels this year instead of punching you specifically in the feels with a needle. Like.
Yeah, because like usually I feel like for me to like get to that point where I'm just like super, super affected, it has to be like, it's not just like a character that I know a lot about, it's a character that I have like had time to think about a lot and to have like a more complex idea of. So while this was definitely very feelsy, it's just like not the kind of thing that makes me cry.
Yes,
I'm definitely I'm having emotions.
It's
just,
I promised at one point. I made this promise several years ago, and I have not fulfilled it. And it's to my greatest shame. I will make you smut. I will write you midwinter smut that makes you cry one day. It is a goal of mine. And thank you, Owen, for listening. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, Allegra.
We will see you. We'll be doing this again next midwinter. In the meantime, come write with us in Discord. Come hang out with us. Let me know what you think of this sad, sad story. It's up on Goodreads. It's up on Amazon. Reviews are always welcome. It's free on Story Origin. There is a link below. And thank the frontline workers, whether it be at grocery stores or hospitals or anywhere in your life. Thank you for everyone who's wearing a mask and not going out when unnecessarily and foregoing seeing their friends and family this midwinter. We have, I think, a lot to remember and a lot to be thankful for this year. And I think we'll leave it at that today. Thank you again for being here, and we will see you next time.